Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are going to be focusing on the coding side of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Have you ever heard some of those terms like triggers or procedures or event subscribers and code units and thought, what in the world do those even mean? Well, you're not alone. Today we're going to be breaking down all those concepts using a really helpful YouTube video from Goms Tech Talks as our guide. Get ready to demystify some of these concepts and see how they can really amp up your Business Central game.
It's amazing how much power those coding elements can give you just for customizing and automating your business processes. So we'll unpack each one and show you how they work and why they're such valuable tools.
Okay, so let's dive right in with triggers. Imagine you have this rule in your business that every single sales order needs to have at least a 5% discount. Now, you could manually check every order, but who has time for that? Triggers can automate this for you.
Yeah, that's the beauty of triggers. They're like little code ninjas that just jump into action whenever something specific happens in Business Central. Let's stick with that discount example. You set the trigger to activate when a new sales order is created or an existing one is modified. If that discount is below 5%, the trigger swoops in and automatically bumps it up to that minimum.
So it's like having this built-in safety net to make sure that your business rules are always enforced. Even if someone forgets to apply that discount manually, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, and what makes triggers so powerful is they're connected to specific tables in Business Central. So in our example, the trigger is tied to the sales order table. This means that anytime a record in that table is created or changed, the trigger checks that discount and make sure it meets your rule. It's all about maintaining data consistency and making sure that your system reflects how your business actually operates.
So I see understanding triggers is crucial because it lets you ensure that data quality is top-notch and consistent across the board. The rules that you set in the real world are automatically reflected in your Business Central system. That's a big win for accuracy and efficiency.
Absolutely. Now, you might have some complex logic that needs to happen within a trigger, but instead of cramming it all into the trigger itself, Business Central gives you a way to organize and reuse that logic. And that's where code units come in.
Code units. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So it's like having this toolbox filled with these pre-built tools that are each designed for a specific task. Need to perform that complicated sales order calculation again. Just grab the right code unit.
That's a great way to think about it. Code units are self-contained blocks of code that are designed to handle specific tasks, and they can be called from other parts of your system. Unlike triggers, which are tied to specific tables, code units are more versatile. You can use them in triggers and in other code units, and even in different parts of your Business Central application.
Wow, that's way more efficient than writing the same code over and over again in different places.
Exactly. And here's another cool thing about code units. Let's say you need to update that complex calculation. Instead of hunting down every place you use that code, you just update it once in the code unit itself. And the changes are reflected everywhere it's used. Talk about streamlining maintenance.
So code units are all about reusability and keeping your code organized and easy to manage. That makes a ton of sense. But what about those times when you need to perform specific tasks within a particular object, like a page in Business Central? That's where procedures come in, right?
You got it. Procedures are like those mini routines we create in our daily lives, like the steps for making coffee or packing a bag. It's a specific set of actions to achieve a particular outcome.
Okay, so procedures are like focused blocks of code that handle a specific task.
Yeah.
But they live within a particular object, like a page or even another code unit. It's like having this specialized team working behind the scenes just to keep things running smoothly.
Exactly. For example, imagine you have a page in Business Central that displays a list of customers, and you want to add a button that, when clicked, calculates the total sales for each customer. Instead of putting all that calculation logic directly on the page, you'd create a procedure within that customer page to handle the calculation.
That's smart. So procedures are all about keeping your code organized and efficient. They help you break down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks, and they live within a specific part of your system.
Now, we've talked about trailers reacting to specific events like creating or modifying records, but Business Central has a broader way of responding to events as well, and that's where event subscribers come into play. They're like those friends who are always in the know, picking up on any interesting happenings and reacting accordingly.
Event subscribers, okay, I'm intrigued. So they're also triggered by events, but it's not limited to changes at the table level, like with triggers.
Right. Event subscribers respond to a wider range of events within Business Central. They're typically linked to specific objects and react to events raised by those objects. For instance, let's say someone modifies a customer record. An event subscriber could be set up to listen for that modify event and then trigger a notification or even kick off a more complex
Yeah.
process.
So event subscribers are like having these super attentive listeners in your system,
Yeah.
reacting to specific occurrences and taking action based on what they hear. That's a pretty cool way to add custom responses and make your Business Central system even more dynamic and interactive.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Triggers are like security guards that are focused on specific entrances, while event subscribers are more like event coordinators that are monitoring the entire venue, ready to respond to anything that pops up.
I love that analogy.
Mhm.
But before we get too carried away with all these coding possibilities, let's take a step back and make sure we're all on the same page. We've got these 4 powerful tools: triggers, code units, procedures, and event subscribers, each with its own strengths and ideal use cases.
Right, and the key is understanding those nuances and how they fit into the bigger picture of your Business Central system. Choosing the right tool for the job can make a huge difference in how effectively you can customize and automate your processes.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored what each of these coding elements is, how they work, and why they're so important for tailoring Business Central to your specific needs. But we're not done yet. In the next part, we'll delve even deeper into how these elements can work together to create some truly powerful solutions. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Business Central's coding tools. Now that we've got a handle on what each element is, let's get into the exciting part, seeing how they can work together to create some really sophisticated solutions.
All right, let's get those gears turning. I'm all for understanding the individual pieces, but seeing them in action and interacting with each other. That's where the real aha moments happen. So can you actually use, say, a trigger to set up a procedure or call a code unit?
Absolutely. Imagine this. You have a business rule that requires a pretty complex calculation whenever a new customer is added to your system. You could set up a trigger on the customer table that springs into action when a new record is inserted. Then within that trigger, you could call a code unit that contains all the logic for that intricate calculation.
Ah, so it's like a chain reaction. The trigger kicks things off, and then the code unit swoops in to handle the heavy lifting. That keeps the trigger code clean and focused, while the more complex stuff is tucked away neatly in a reusable code unit. I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together like a puzzle.
Exactly. And it can get even more layered than that. That same code unit you called from the trigger could have several procedures within it, each handling a specific part of the calculation. This modular approach makes your code so much easier to understand, maintain, and troubleshoot.
Okay, so we've got triggers working seamlessly with code units and procedures. Now, where do event subscribers fit into this collaborative coding ecosystem? They seem like they could add another layer of dynamic response to the mix.
Yeah, event subscribers are really key for creating a more responsive and interactive experience in Business Central. Let's revisit that example of a notification popping up when a customer record is modified. You could have an event subscriber that's specifically listening for the on-after modify event on the customer table. Whenever that event occurs, the subscriber's code could check to see if specific fields were changed. And if so, display a targeted notification with all the relevant details.
So event subscribers aren't just reacting blindly to any event that happens. They can be quite selective about which events they respond to and what actions they take. That's a pretty nuanced level of control.
Precisely. You have a lot of flexibility with event subscribers. They can trigger simple actions like notifications or logging information, or they can initiate much more complex processes by calling procedures or even other code units.
Wow, it's like these coding elements are the building blocks of a custom Business Central universe.
I-
The possibilities seem endless.
You're catching on. By understanding what each element excels at and how they can interact, you can truly create a system that reflects your unique business processes and needs.
This is all incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder about the potential downsides. We've talked about all the amazing things these coding elements can do. But are there any situations where they might create problems if not used carefully?
That's a smart question. While these tools are really powerful, it's crucial to use them wisely. For instance, too many triggers can actually slow down your system's performance. And if your code units or procedures aren't well structured, they can become difficult to manage and troubleshoot.
So it's a bit of a balancing act, harnessing the power of these tools while being mindful of potential pitfalls. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. One common mistake is overusing triggers. It can be tempting to use them for everything, but sometimes a simpler approach like using Business Central's built-in functionality might be more efficient.
Right? It's about choosing the right tool for the job and understanding the potential trade-offs.
Yeah.
You don't want to overcomplicate things unnecessarily.
Absolutely. And testing is crucial. Thoroughly testing your code, especially when using triggers and event subscribers, is essential to ensure that everything works as expected and that you haven't introduced any unintended consequences. You want your customizations to enhance your system, not create headaches.
Speaking of testing, I'm curious about the actual development process. How do developers work with these coding elements in Business Central? Is it all done through a visual interface, or is it more code-heavy?
Well, Business Central actually offers a modern development environment that caters to both visual and code-based approaches. You have the flexibility to work with these elements in ways that suit your preferences and level of expertise.
So if someone's more comfortable with a visual drag-and-drop kind of approach, they're not left out in the cold.
Not at all. Business Central provides tools that let you define triggers and event subscribers without writing tons of code. You can often configure them by selecting events, conditions, and actions from a user-friendly interface. It's a bit like building with pre-made blocks.
And that sounds pretty intuitive. But what about the folks who love to get their hands dirty with code? Are they able to dive in and have more granular control?
Absolutely. For those who prefer coding, Business Central provides full access to write code for your triggers, code units, procedures, and event subscribers. Using AL, the programming language specifically designed for Business Central, this gives you a really fine-grained level of control over the logic and behavior of your customizations.
So it's a win-win situation. You've got the visual ease for simpler tasks and the coding power for more complex customizations. Business Central seems to strike a good balance between accessibility and flexibility.
Exactly. It aims to make development accessible to a wider range of users while still providing the depth and flexibility that experienced developers crave.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've gone from understanding the individual coding elements to seeing how they can interact and be used strategically to create robust solutions. But I have a feeling there's even more to discover. When we return, let's shift gears and talk about how our listeners can start applying these concepts to their own Business Central systems. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring all the ins and outs of Business Central coding, from triggers and code units to procedures and event subscribers. But now let's shift gears and talk about how you can actually start putting all this knowledge to work in your own Business Central system.
Yeah, that's the really exciting part, taking these concepts from theory into practice. It's like having this incredible toolbox full of all these powerful tools and figuring out all the amazing things that you can build.
Exactly. So where does someone even begin? Are there like any low-hanging fruit, so to speak, where these coding elements can make a big impact without needing a ton of technical know-how? I'm all for quick wins.
Absolutely. One of the most common and effective ways to use triggers is for data validation. Think about those fields in your Business Central system that have very specific rules. Maybe a customer's postal code needs to follow a certain format, or a discount percentage can't exceed a certain limit. Triggers are perfect for enforcing those rules because they can automatically check the data as it's being entered.
So instead of manually checking every single entry or relying on users to remember all the rules, you have this trigger acting as a vigilant gatekeeper, ensuring data integrity right from the get-go. It's like having this extra layer of quality control that's built right into your system.
Precisely. And you can even take it a step further by using triggers to send notifications or update related records based on the data that's entered. For example, if a customer's credit limit is exceeded on a sales order, a trigger could automatically send an alert to a manager for approval.
Okay, that's a great example of how triggers can not only enforce data quality, but also streamline workflows and boost efficiency. Now, what about code units? Are there any like beginner-friendly ways to start leveraging their power? I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get coding.
Definitely. One area where code units really shine is in simplifying complex calculations. Let's say you have a process that involves calculating discounts. Based on like a tiered system, different discount levels depending on the purchase amount, you could encapsulate all that logic in a code unit and then call it from various places in your system, like sales orders, invoices, or even custom reports.
So it's like creating this centralized hub for all of that calculation logic, ensuring consistency across your system and reducing the risk of errors. That can often creep in when you're copying and pasting code in multiple places.
Exactly. And remember, if you ever need to update that calculation logic, you only need to change it once in the code unit. And those changes are reflected everywhere it's used. Talk about simplifying maintenance.
Now, procedures, we've talked about them as these little helpers within specific objects. Any tips for using them effectively? I want to make sure I'm getting the most out of them.
Procedures are fantastic for organizing and streamlining your code within a particular object. Think of them as like your internal organizers breaking down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. Let's say you have a custom page in Business Central with a lot of logic behind it. You can use procedures to group related code together, making it easier to understand and maintain.
So it's kind of like decluttering a messy room. You're organizing your code into all these neat compartments, making it much easier to find what you need and keep things tidy.
Exactly. And well-structured procedures can also boost your code's reusability. If you find yourself repeating a certain set of actions within an object, consider creating a procedure for it. You can then call that procedure whenever you need to perform those actions, saving you time and effort down the road.
All right, we've covered triggers for validation and automation, code units for complex calculations and reusability, and procedures for organization and streamlining. Now, what about event subscribers? Any advice for someone who's like dipping their toes into that world for the first time?
Event subscribers are a really great way to add custom responses to specific events in Business Central. A relatively simple use case is for logging information. Let's say you want to keep track of every time a customer record is modified. You could create an event subscriber that's attuned to the on-after-modify event on the customer table, and then logs all the changes that were made.
Oh, so it's like having this behind-the-scenes historian, meticulously keeping a record of all the changes that are happening in your system that could be super valuable for auditing purposes. Or just understanding how data is evolving over time.
Precisely. And event subscribers can do much more than just logging. They can trigger notifications, update related records, or even initiate more complex workflows based on the specific events that they're listening for. They give you this powerful way to create a more responsive and customized experience within Business Central.
This has been an amazing journey. We've gone from like a basic understanding of these coding elements to actually seeing their real potential for transforming a Business Central system. I feel like I've leveled up my Business Central skills today.
It's all about empowering users to take control of their systems and tailor them to their unique needs. And what's really great is that Business Central provides all the tools and resources to make this level of customization accessible, even for those without like a deep technical background.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Business Central coding.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're leaving today feeling inspired to explore these powerful tools and unlock new possibilities within your own system.
Remember, it's a journey of experimentation and continuous learning. Don't be afraid to try new things. Delve into the documentation and connect with the vibrant Business Central community. There's a wealth of knowledge and support out there to guide you along the way.
And as always, we're here to help you navigate the exciting world of technology. Until next time, keep diving deeper and keep those questions coming.